Welcome to this new episode, and this time we are going to talk about navigation within the viewport. So, the navigation and its philosophy in Blender is pretty straightforward and quite similar to other 3D programs. Basically, the idea is that you will move in the 3D space thanks to three different actions. One is orbit, which is rotating around your object, zooming, which is quite easy to get, and panning. And thanks to those three actions, you will be able to do all all the movements that you need in the 3D view to get to the nice angle to do whatever you have to do. So let's discover these and let's discover more stuff about the different views you can use within Blender. So as you saw, it's super easy, and all you need here is a three mouse button. So the first thing we will want to do here is to rotate around this wonderful cube. To do so, you just have to hold middle mouse button and drag the mouse around. For the zoom, super easy, you just have to scroll, but you can also use Control and middle mouse button and then you drag, and this will help you having some kind of a more precise zoom because this step that you have when you scroll is not always the best thing. And finally, the pan is Shift plus middle mouse button that you hold and you can move around. Those three actions are super easy but also super important because you will actually use them all the time. And I really encourage you to get familiar with them because you will always need navigation to get somewhere and see some specific area, and yeah, this is quite important. So here I would like to give you one trick that I use all the time and I can actually not work without that. And this comes from the realization that when you zoom, wherever your cursor is, you will move to some point, and it's kind of an invisible point, and it's actually the same as the one you rotate around. As you can see, I'm not rotating around the center of my object, I'm just rotating somewhere, and if I pan, then this invisible point changes. And so this can be super disturbing when you zoom because you would like to zoom to the cube, but there is no other way than panning to actually get to see the cube, and then you have to pan and zoom and pan and zoom a lot, which is to me not the best thing. So to make it easier, let's just go in the preferences. So to do that, you go in edit up there and in preferences, and here you will have the preference window that will appear. So here, as you can imagine, you have a lot of settings about all kind of stuff. It's written here, it's quite easy. So in this case, we want to go to navigation and enable zoom to mouse position. You don't have to save because there is autosave, so you can just close the window, and here you can see that by scrolling you will scroll or descroll based on your mouse position, which I think is super convenient because it just saves some pan and zoom to just have one action, which is zooming and aiming with your cursor. And yeah, it's just a small trick, but to me it makes a lot of difference. Still, even with this small tweak, sometimes you can get actually lost in the view and you don't know where you are or where you have to go. And let's see just a way to fix that. So you can go in view and press frame selected, and this will basically recenter your view based on the selected object. In this case, the cube is already selected, so we zoom back to this one. I show you the menu way, but this is just to tell you basically that there are menus there that will help you do most of the things you want, but Blender is a lot about shortcuts. So every time and more I will just tell you quickly the way to do it through menus. Just most of the time, sorry, I will just tell you the shortcut. In this case, the shortcut for frame selected is the dot you can find on the numpad. Also, if you have no selected object, or you have multiple objects you want to zoom in or recenter your view on, you can do Shift C, which will take all your objects and let you see them in the viewport. You can find it here with frame all. So next important thing about 3D is that perspective is not the only way to visualize your 3D world. Indeed, having these like converging lines can sometimes be annoying, because even though it gives you a good appreciation of your object, sometimes you just want to work precisely and have less perspective, so that you can focus on like how your points are aligned or how your shape is in a more theoretical point of view. And for that, you can toggle between perspective, which is the mode we have right now, and what is called orthographic view, which will basically be 3D but without any perspective. To do that, let's not discover it through menus, but let's just use the shortcut, which is 5 on your numpad. As you can see, every line become parallel, even in your object, and this means that you have a 3D representation, but you don't have any perspective. And this will be really, really useful for some areas of your work where you need really theoretically perfect projection view and just move things around specifically. It's a bit disturbing, and it gives a wrong impression of proportions, but that's why it's important to switch. And you can just do that by pressing 5, which will toggle between perspective and orthographic. But maybe you don't have an numpad on your keyboard if you have a laptop, for example, and there is a way to fix that, which is going in the preferences again, and this time you go to input and tick the box emulate numpad. And now the row of number that you have on top of your keyboard becomes basically your numpad. And so if I press 5 on my laptop, you can see that even though it writes numpad 5, it's actually the 5 of on top of my keyboard. And this will let you switch even if you have a laptop, and it will be super useful for the next part, which is the different views that we can have in Blender, the predefined views. Those predefined views are basically the top view, the front view, the side view, like all of these 2D plane views that will help you see your project in a different way, and maybe closer to what you could draw as a sketch or use it as a reference image and everything. And to access those views, you can use the gizmo up there, which is basically a representation of the different axes. And if you click on one of these axes, for example the Z one, then you will get to the top view. The axes are quite important to know. You will always have, in every 3D space of softwares, you have like X, Y, and Z. In Blender system, in Blender's paradigm, Z is always the vertical one, and X and Y are for the length and the width, but this depends on your coordinate system, the one that you want to use. But we will talk about that a bit later. For now, you have to know that by clicking on one of these axes, you can be aligned with it, and you can see up there that this tells you which view you picked. So in this case, we are in the back view, and by clicking on the red one, I get to the left orthographic or top view. And if you just press middle mouse button, then you extract yourself from this viewpoint and this orthographic view, and you go back to perspective. But as I told you, I don't want to have to click somewhere to do an action And even though you know that a way to do it would be to go in the menus, here we want to learn the shortcuts. So the shortcuts are the following. 7 will be top view, 3 will be side view, and 1 will be front view. Before we go further, I would like to just explain something here. I was talking about coordinate systems, and if you are working for transportation design or maybe design in general, you may have heard about Y0, which is the center of your vehicle in general. And so Y0 corresponds to the moment where this green line will have a value of 0, because you can imagine that based on the gizmo here, the more you go off the center, the more there is a value of this this grid basically that is incrementing. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And on the other direction you have the minus. So -1, -2, -3, etc. And Y0 is here. But then there is kind of a paradox, because if you go in front view or in back view, you don't see the Y, and the Y should be actually going from one side to another, because the middle of your car or any other vehicle is here. So what I'm trying to say here is that what Blender considers as a side view is in the automotive industry a front or a back view, and what Blender considers as front view is actually a side view in the automotive industry. So if you're working for or working on vehicles, I just encourage you to at least be aware of that and make choices depending on that. Like your Y0 is here basically, and so your side view will be what Blender thinks is a back view. This was just a small thing I wanted to explain. Maybe it doesn't ring a bell for you if you are not interested in vehicle design or anything, or never heard of Y0, but I think it's an interesting thing to know, and I have some friends that had the question and that actually did the mistake, so I just think it's useful and can help you, especially if you're working in a professional way with Blender. But so let's just go back to the three shortcuts we discovered. So 1 is your front or side view, depending on which coordinate system you want to use. 3 is your side or front view, and 7 the top view. One thing is you can add control to any of these three shortcuts to actually display the opposite view of the one without control. So control 7 will be actually bottom view and not top view. Control 3 will be the other side, and control 1 will be the back instead of the front view. And you can still also toggle between perspective and orthographic view when you are in one of these views, and this may give you just a starting point for seeing your car in perspective and in side view, but usually just rotate around. It's just easier. And also, if you look at your numpad now, maybe you're thinking that we're using 4 of the 10 keys, and the other one probably have also a function, and you're actually right. So let's just go through them quickly, but I don't use them a lot. But like 2 and 8 will be the one that you use for just slightly offsetting your camera in the vertical axis, and 4 and 6 will be the same in the horizontal axis. And then 9 will be just looking at in the opposite direction of where you are. And finally 0 will be the camera view. So this means, or at least you need to have a camera, but in the basic Blender scene there is a camera, so you can toggle it. And if you just use the middle mouse button, you will extract yourself from the camera and go back in the normal perspective view. This is also something that other software are dealing with differently. Blender has a specific camera view. So the camera is an object, and if you move it somewhere, then your viewpoint will be based on this new position and everything, but it's not attached to your viewport view by default. We will talk about that later. So as a quick conclusion, navigation is super important and you have to master it before imagining mastering anything else in Blender. It's not difficult though, it's just 3 simple actions that you can operate really easily. Here we saw some tweaks, like the zoom to mouse position that will help you being more efficient in the way you navigate and zoom in specific parts of your work so that you can really focus on those. We also saw some shortcut that will help you toggle between perspective and orthographic views as well as specific views. Maybe I lost you with the Y0 coordinate system thing, but again, if you are working in vehicle design, then you know that there is this thing of the Y0, and you just have to keep in mind that maybe what you think is the front, or what Blender tells you that that is the front view, is maybe in fact a side view. You just have to be aware of this coordinate system thing, but that's all. So now you know more about the interface and how to deal with it. Let's start to see what we can do with objects.